My lecture today is B.B.King and Buddhism. The first thing I want you to do, I want you to look here and see a picture of Buddhism. Buddhism is the first African-American Nichiren priest in America. In 2012, I believe, CNN did a story on her of CNN on Black in America. And the reason that I want you to see Buddhism and how this relates to B.B.King and Buddhism is because the Japanese teach a kind of Buddhism that's marred in cultural imperialism. See, the Japanese want black people to give up their culture. They want to subject you to cultural annihilation, and they want to make Japanese culture dominate to subordinate you. And in fact, in 2013, I was looking to join the Nichiren Buddhist organization, and I went to my friend Shaka Kafana's house. Now, Shaka, I introduced Shaka to Buddhism in 1983, and I went to the brother's house, and this brother's Nichiren Buddhist, and he says, well, we got this black priest, and she's into her culture, she's into her history, and I go to the brother's house, and all I see is all this Japanese stuff with this brother. I said, wait a minute, man, this brother done gave up his culture, gave up his history. What the hell's going on around here? So I write a letter to Buddhism, and I ask Buddhism, what is the Nichiren policy in regards to African Americans? Because what I see among African Americans in the SGI, Nichiren Shoshu, and Nichiren Shu is that I see cultural imperialism. I see a Buddhism whereas black people are expected to subordinate and attenuate and not relate to their culture in order to become Buddhists. This is cultural imperialism. Now, how does this relate to B.B.King and Buddhism? Ladies and gentlemen, on May the 14th, just a few days ago, the king of the blues, B.B. King, passed away. And this lecture that we're doing today is an honor to B.B. King. It's an honor to B.B. King because thanks to B.B. King, you have an organization like the Proud Black Buddhist. The Proud Black Buddhist emerged because of a man like B.B. King. B.B. King said in his autobiography that he has two strikes. One, or he said he was double black. One is blues, and the other one is Buddhism. B.B. King faced all kind of racial hardships. He faced all kind of challenges, but yet the man stuck true to his blues. He stuck true to the culture. In fact, B.B. King is known as the Black Cultural Ambassador. He is a cultural ambassador of the blues music because he used his skills, he used his ability, he used his passion for the blues to promote the blues worldwide, and B.B. King went into over 80 countries. And it was because of B.B. King that we have the Proud Black Buddhist World Association. Now, let's kind of get into our lecture. Now, years ago, I went to these NSA Buddhist culture festivals. That's Nichiren Shoshu America, when the SGI and Nichiren Shoshu won. Now, white folk and the Japanese, they got together about the culture, and they purposely did not include black music at these culture festivals. Now, how in the world can you talk about American culture is that the first and original American music is Negro spirituals, blues, jazz, soul, and rock and roll comes from the black experience. Now, the Gosho reads, only Buddhists know the true entity of all phenomena, and this is the way that we explain B.B.King. See, in the Lotus Sutra, it explains that all phenomena has 10 aspects. Let's go into the 10 aspects of Buddhism, and let's break this down to explain B.B.King and Buddhism. Now, the first of the 10 aspects is the appearance. With the appearance of B.B.King, its appearance, it has a nature. The nature was blues. The entity, appearance, nature, and entity. The appearance, nature, and entity gave rise to power. And the power gave rise to number 5, an influence. And the influence came about because of number 6, an inherent cause. An inherent cause came about because of a relationship. And the relationship came about because of a latent effect. And a latent effect happens because there is a manifest effect. And number 10, there is a consistency from beginning to the end. This explains the phenomena of B.B.King. But let's take this thing a little bit deeper and begin to explain it from the standpoint of Buddhism. See, when a Buddha looks at things, or when a Buddha looks at something like a B.B.King, we look at phenomena from the 3 realms of the past, the present, and the future. Now, when you go into the realms of the past, present, and future, and when you look at B.B.King, you must go into the past, the present, and the future. So when Anthony Elmore looks at B.B.King, ladies and gentlemen, I can see in 1819, I can see the 7th president of the United States of America named Andrew Jackson, who was a slave owner, who is on the $20 bill coming downtown of Memphis, Tennessee on the Mississippi River, and he naming the land that was owned by the Native Americans Memphis after Memphis, Egypt. That was Andrew Jackson, Marcus Winchester, and John Overton, who named Memphis. But ladies and gentlemen, you have to understand the culture and to understand the history of Memphis to get into B.B.King. You see, before we can get into B.B.King, we have to look at the cause and effect relationship as to how a B.B.King came about. Now, I want you to look at a picture. There's a picture in Memphis called the Hernando de Soto Bridge, because a conquistador by the name of Hernando de Soto was the first white man to come into this area, and conquistador means conqueror. So the conqueror first came to this area, and later on down the road, after America became a colony or a country, Americans killed a lot of the Native Americans. So ladies and gentlemen, when John Andrew Jackson got to be the president of the United States of America, they pulled off what is called the Indian Removal Act. Now, when they pulled off the Indian Removal Act, they ferried all of the Native Americans across the Mississippi River into Arkansas. And they walked these people, a lot of them died. Some died of starvation, some died of cold, and they walked those people all the way to Oklahoma. And when one of the Indian chiefs got into Little Rock, Arkansas, he said, "This is a trail of tears," because he cried like a baby because he had to leave his homeland and go be put on a reservation in Oklahoma. But ladies and gentlemen, it didn't stop now. It didn't stop there, because in 1835, ladies and gentlemen, after they ushered all of the Native Americans and put them on a reservation and killed all the Native Americans, then the people brought in slaves. It was Eli Whitney who invented the cotton gin. When he invented the cotton gin, they were able to produce more cotton. And when they produced more cotton, they needed more slave labor. So from the 1830s, and when you got up to 1850, America sold 2/3 of the world's cotton. Memphis became the cotton capital of the world, and Memphis, Tennessee was also the slave capital of the world. And as the whites began to make expansion into the West, the good whites in the North who were industrialists and the whites who in the South were cotton raisers, there was a big conflict because they said, "You can keep your slavery, let's just not expand with slavery." And so there was a big fight because the whites said, "Well, hell, I'm going to take me some more slaves, I'm going to go into the West, and we're going to just take this slavery all over America." And a big fight ensued. Now, about 1860 thereof, a president who was a Republican, who was a pretty liberal guy, his name was Abraham Lincoln, and Abraham Lincoln got into conflict with these white Southerners, and the guy in South Carolina said, "Well, what we're going to do, we're going to just succeed away from the Union." Now, I'm going to get to B.B. King, but we got to get there. I got to take you there, ladies and gentlemen. Now, what happened was, the first state to succeed was South Carolina, and the second was Mississippi. Now, you had the Civil War going on. Now, in Tennessee, in the eastern part of Tennessee that was close to Virginia, they didn't want to succeed, but down here in the West, where them white folk making a whole lot of money, they wanted to succeed. Well, anyway, Tennessee was the last state to succeed from the Union. Now, they're making all of this money in Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis, Tennessee was the cotton capital of the world. It was the world's largest plantation culture in the world. They had the stock market. Memphis, Tennessee was making a whole lot of money. Now, when the Civil War happened, Abraham Lincoln, the war was dead even, and Abraham Lincoln needed more labor. And when the white army came to Memphis, Tennessee, the white people, that was Nathan Bedford Forrest, the guy that started the Ku Klux Klan, he ran into Mississippi. And so what Abraham Lincoln did, he offered any African American, any black person, if you join the Union Army, I will give your family money. And so what Abraham Lincoln did, he offered these guys a chance to be in the army and to get a job. 1 in every 4 African American men or black men in Tennessee joined the Union Army. Now, right downtown, ladies and gentlemen, where I used to go practice karate, it's a little place called French Fort. Now, it was originally a Confederate fort, and the Union Army took over the fort. It was called Fort Pickering, right there at Crump Avenue, and where I-40, for those who are in Memphis, but there's a place called French Fort, and it was called Fort Pickering, which went 2 miles down into Beale Street. Now, what they did was, Fort Pickering was a black fort with black people. they had another fort in Memphis called Fort Chelsea. Now, we coming on down to how B.B.King got in this. Now, you got to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that here it is in 1861, you got black people who were once slaves. Now they are part of the Union Army. They got a salary, they got guns, they getting education because the Freedmen's Bureau came to Memphis, Tennessee. Now, there was a man who was a steward. His daddy was half white, and he was a steward on a steamship, because they used to take these steamships, run them from Memphis all the way down to New Orleans, and the boats would go out of New Orleans and take the cotton all the way to, go all the way around and take the cotton all the way to London. Now I'm going to get there, how the blues happened. Now what happened was, this steamship captain, his name was Robert R. Church. Robert R. Church set up a bar on Beale Street. Now, after the Civil War, man, they had these Irishmen. See, when all the white guys left Mississippi, then they had the Irish who came over here in 1860 because of the famine. They joined the police department and the post office. They were working civil service jobs. And after the war, the Freedmen's Bureau was kind of in control of everything. But Robert R. Church made a hotel, and he built a bar on a place called Beale Street. And all the black soldiers could come down on Beale Street, and they could get a drink, and they had a saloon, and they could play the music. Where Robert R. Church became America's first black millionaire. He was a millionaire because he was serving these black people, and he had a hotel, he had a saloon, and he became very, very wealthy. In fact, what Robert R. Church did, Robert R. Church built an auditorium on Beale Street. It was called Church Park Auditorium. It was the largest auditorium in the world for black people. Back in the late 1880s and all the way to 1900, 1890, black people, Beale Street in Memphis was one of the best places in the world for black people to live. And what happened in Memphis? A culture developed. Around, 1906, a man by the name of William Christopher came. He was a band director, and William Christopher came into Memphis. But what happened was, around 1890, a white Democrat got into power. He got into power, and he said he was going to take Memphis back to the days of glory. And what he meant by the days of glory, he said he going to get rid of all these black people, all of these black businesses, because they had more businesses in Memphis, Tennessee in 1890 than they have in 2015, because you had black manufacturing companies, you had black industry, you had black everything, black sports teams, we had black everything. Memphis was one of the greatest places where African Americans lived, and we had a culture. And what happened, this man by the name of William Christopher, he created a song for this man. And this man was Boss Crump. He was called Boss Crump, who was the former mayor of Memphis, but he ran Memphis, and he ran all the power of Memphis. And William Christopher had wrote a song called Blues or Memphis Blues. And what he did was he wrote the song. He was not the first person to play blues. Blues have been around for years, but he wrote the song. You would know the man, or people in Memphis would know the man as William Christopher Handy. They called him W.C. Handy. It was W.C. Handy that is the father of the blues. He's the father of the blues because he was the first man to copyright a blues music. He copyrighted the music because white people said that black music could not be written down, and he was a school-trained musician. He wrote it down, he performed in Carnegie Hall, and he introduced blues and jazz to the world. Now, we move into a culture. When E.H. Crump got into power, Nobody could do anything in Memphis unless you was Mr. Crump's boy. Mr. Crump had what he's called Mr. Crump nigga. And Mr. Crump systematically got rid of all the black businesses or any African person of African descent. He destroyed all the businesses. He would send the police in front of a business and shake customers down, and the business person would go out of business, or Crump would make the taxes due and steal black businesses. The man did some dirty, underhanded tactics to get rid of black people. Now, on September the 16th, 1925, a man was born in the area of Indianola, Mississippi. His name was Riley B. King. Riley B. King was known in Memphis, Tennessee as Beale Street Blues Boy. Beale Street Blues Boy later became the name B.B.King. Now, something happened in Memphis, Tennessee. As I said, only Buddhists know the true entity of all phenomena. That is, again, that is an appearance, a nature, an entity, a power, an influence. There's an inherent cause. There's a relationship. There's a latent effect, a manifest effect, and a consistency from beginning to the end. See, B.B. King came to Memphis around the late 1940s, around 1949. Something happened. Actually, it happened in 1947. In 1947, they opened a country and western radio station called WDIA. But the owner of the station, a guy by the name of Bert Ferguson, tried something that had never been done before in America. They would format a radio station for African Americans. In 1949, they formatted the radio station WDIA, and they made it the first black radio station in the nation. And there was B.B. King, a Beale Street Blues Boy, who later became B.B. King. He was a disc jockey on the show. He could play his music on the show. And he was in the Mid-South area and became very popular. So there's B.B. King becoming very popular. Now, we come, ladies and gentlemen, see, there was a culture of music. You had Ma Rainey, and you had just so many different people. Ferry Lewis. Memphis was the cultural mecca of black music. We call ourselves in Memphis the heart. This is the soul of America, because when it comes down to the soul, when it comes down to the blues, when it comes down to the raw gut music, Memphis, Tennessee is the place. Now, in about 1951, a man came down from Clarksdale, Mississippi. His name was Ike Turner. And Ike Turner and Jackie Brimstone recorded a song. The song was called Rocket 88. It became the first rock and roll record in the history of America. That's where rock and roll was created. Straight down the street in a place called Sun Studios. And B.B. King had recorded records at Sun Studios. And around 1953 or 1953, B.B. King got a bus. He decided he was going to leave WDIA radio station, and he got a bus. And the driver of that bus was a man by the name of Cato Walker, who was a friend and relative of B.B. King. Now, the reason that I tied this in is because there was Cato, and then there was Cato Jr., who later became the band director and saxophone player for B.B. King. And the reason that I bring the name Cato in, because Cato Walker drove B.B. King's bus. He didn't live in Memphis anymore, but the family lived in a section called Glenview, and Cato's mother and the father were Kato's mother and my mother were best friends, and he used to drive B.B. King's bus. But we were all tied into B.B. King because as a kid coming up, B.B. King was a part of my heart. B.B. King was a part of my soul because I saw the people enjoying the music of B.B. King. Now, as we began to go, B.B. King had that bus, and B.B. King toured all over America. And in fact, in 1954, at Sun Studios, there was a white man. This white man recorded a song by a black artist. Now, the song they recorded was made in 1946. It was a song by a black man called Big Arthur Crudup. Big Arthur Crudup was from a place called Money, Mississippi. Well, this white boy was a little kid, 13 or 10 years old, used to listen to Big Arthur Crudup, and he's a white guy who used to go over to West Memphis, used to drive a dump truck, who graduated from school in Memphis, who moved from Tupelo. This white boy became Elvis Aaron Presley, the king of rock and roll, who recorded his first song in 1954. So in 1955, they used to have what is called the WDIA Goodwill Review. And you will see a picture of a B.B. King, who was born in 1925, and an Elvis Presley, who was born in, say, 1935, I believe. So they're about 10 years older, but Elvis used to hang out with the black folk. Elvis learned the black music. Now, Elvis did his thing with rock and roll, ladies and gentlemen, and B.B. King went all over the world, ended up going into over 80 countries. He became the ambassador of the blues music. He became a Memphis ambassador. When they started rock and roll and they started doing music, people like Jimi Hendrix and other musicians around the world, those guys in London would listen to B.B. King's music, and he made a big influence all around the world. And from 1925 up until his death, just a few days ago, a couple of weeks ago, B.B. King became the cultural ambassador for black people because he stood strong and he promoted his music. What I want other African Americans to understand, that B.B. King was true to the cause. He was true to the cause of culture. He was true to who he was. People loved his music and they loved B.B. King. B.B. King was a part of Memphis. B.B. King is a part of Anthony Elmore. In fact, let me tell you my B.B. King story. Back in the early 80s, me and my friend Tony Russell, who became a kickboxing champion, I was a kickboxing champion, and we were coming from somewhere, and we went into the bathroom, and I noticed B.B. King in the bathroom at the airport. So I said, Tony, you know this man here? Tony said, no, I don't. I said, Tony, you don't know this man? And B.B. King was just looking and smiling. I said, Tony, that's B.B. King. And they hugged, and we all hugged, and we said, B.B., it was so nice meeting you and talking to you. And as I was leaving, B.B. King stopped me and said, hey, Amp, you didn't think I know, but you are Anthony Elmore, the kickboxing champion. I was so flattered to meet B.B. King because B.B. King is a man that stood for something. He stood for his people. He went to Japan. He went all over the world to perform. I'm going to close this lecture out in honor of B.B. King. My favorite B.B. King song is I Like to Live the Love I Sing About in My Song. And he's talking about music is love and love is music and perfect harmony. You see, the Lotus Sutra reads this. It says, they look at secular matters in terms of Buddhism. This is the Gift of Rice. The Gift of Rice says they look at secular matters in terms of Buddhism, whereas the Lotus Sutra teaches that secular matters are the entirety of Buddhism. So Buddhism, B.B.King, that is the real Buddhism. The Buddhism is being who you are, being the best at what you do, being true to yourself. And I'm going to close this lecture. We are the best suited, and we are the proud Black Buddhists. I'm Anthony Elmore, president and founder of the Proud Black Buddhist World Association, and I will take you out with my favorite B.B. King song called I Like to Live the Love I Sing About. I remember in 1974, there was this girl named Deborah, and Deborah was so pretty, and boy, I used to do karate, and we listened to that song, and man, it was on. But anyway, let me go with the song, the B.B. King song. B.B. King, we honor you, we love you. And my lecture is B.B. King and Buddhism, or Buddhism and B.B. King, the king of the blues. We're the best suited. I'm the proud Black Buddhist, Anthony Elmore. Have a nice day.
Yes, I do. Every day. I like to live the love I sing about in my song. I live the love I sing about in my song. I want you to just think about it. I want you to sing about it. Just think about it a little bit. Yeah. Oh boy, feels so good now. Yeah. Sing it a little